Hello, and welcome to this all-new episode of the Fairfax Sports Report. I'm your host, Monica Moore, and it's hard to believe, but we are already in Week 5 of the fall sports season. We have all the news and notes, a couple of highlight reels, and 2 phone-in guests tonight. But before we get to all of that, we want to thank the folks that help make this show possible, our good friends at CCI Screen Printing, 703-978-0257. And don't forget, we are on the web. You can check out our website for all the different updates of scores, articles about games, questions and answers with coaches and athletes, www.fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. All right, and I am very happy to be joined in the studio today by Wynn Ellington and Jim Clark, 2 of our favorite analysts from our Friday night games. Welcome, guys.
Hi, how are you today?
Great, thank you. Well, guys, so we got to see a great game this past Friday, and all the rain. Still was an outstanding game between Westfield and Robinson. So, Wynn, were you really surprised about Robinson and how well they played?
I guess I was a little bit surprised about Robinson. They, I thought Westfield was a big favorite heading into this game, but Robinson fought very hard. They had a very effective running attack, and it was just a tough, hard-fought game.
Well, I think we have some highlights of that game, and of course you guys were there giving us the calls. We have the experts. So, Jim, if you want to take us through it.
All right, well, here we go. Both teams, when the game started out, did very well. Westfield, like I said, and the Wynn said, it was just a great football game. It was back and forth in the first half, and then in the second half, everybody kind of took it easy. And when I say taking it easy, the offense decided to take it easy because the defense wasn't letting them do anything. And as you can see, Robinson here was, they were running up and down the field. Their biggest problem was Robinson because Robinson was all set up to, you'll see right here, that is not the fumble. Let me see where we're at.
That's Jordan Anderson.
That's Jordan Anderson. Okay. I was a little ahead of myself. Here's the fumble. Here's the fumble, and this is what ended it for Robinson. Now, they hold Westfield all the way down. The defense just does a great job. They kick it away, and then here's what happens. Bang. And that was the end of the game for Robinson right there. They never recovered from that.
Well, and, they still were running the ball, fairly well. There you see that's Winton Fox right there with the carry for the Rams. And then here's Danny Finiak for the ball. Great catch by the Westfield wide receiver. I think that was Francis was the guy's name. And then Finiak again, he throws this one up. Robinson makes the interception. A really good defensive effort by the Rams.
Sure.
And also their rushing attack. Both, if you like, running football, this game was it for you. And there's Westfield with the pick. That's their star defensive back, Evan Winfrey, spotting that one and bringing it down. Here, this is the second half action. And this was the winning touchdown. Jordan Anderson right up the middle. That was his 3rd touchdown of the game. Robinson trying to make a comeback. Their passing game was really contained. And then there's the story of the game for the Rams was turnovers.
Well, like I said, defense. It was defense kept the Rams in the game. Patrick Lighty Brian Lighty. There's been so many Lighties over the years. Brian Lighty did such a wonderful job, making sure his defense was where they should be, and calling out the signals for them. And they did a wonderful job. Like I said, I think it came down to those 2 mistakes on a 3-yard line. You fumble. The defense again, holds them. They've got a punt, as you see from the end zone, and the ball was a little wet, and it got away from them, and I think that was the deciding factor.
And, certainly Robinson did lose, but I think they have so much to be happy with in that game because they've played a really hard schedule so far this year. They're a very young team. Coach Bendorf told us before the game they're starting 6 sophomores, 4 on defense, 2 on offense. So very, very young club out there facing a pretty seasoned Westfield team. The big story in the region has, of course, been that they lost all those starters from last year's team, but all those kids returning played against those guys every single day in practice. So a very good Westfield team, and I thought Robinson played some outstanding defense, and their running game looked great, particularly in the first half. They've got those 2 backs, Winton Fox and Alex Murray, who were just outstanding.
But, I saw Robinson in their first game with Lake Braddock. and they have improved 100% because the first game, and they all do, they look sloppy, but for a Robinson team, they didn't look like a Robinson team at all. They looked good on last Friday against Westfield, and that game could have gone either way. And, unfortunately for Robinson, it went Westfield's way. But that was a great game. We had a great time announcing it. And the people there are just wonderful, made us feel at home. And so hope they'll invite us back.
I agree with you there. But, I think that it was definitely the best game that we've done this season. And we're talking about, a very strong effort from Robinson. They had, I believe it was 4 turnovers overall, 3 fumbles and 1 interception. And it was that one at the end of it was 2 at the end of the second half when the score was tied, and they had the opportunity to have to make the go-ahead touchdown there. They had the fumble right there at the goal line. It was, I believe it was the exchange between the center and the quarterback was the problem. And then, as you mentioned, the Robinson defense held, and they had Winton Fox back to return the punt, and he just was unable to get control the ball, and it was a wet field. Obviously, that was a factor. And then Westfield recovered, but they didn't give up. They kept on fighting and fighting, and so Westfield won that turnover battle. Westfield did not have any fumbles. They did have that 1 interception, and in the second half, we talked about Jordan Anderson. He had an incredible game. At the beginning of the clips, he had, I believe it was like an 85-yard run, and you saw he got hit a lot, but he just kept on going. And then he just finally found that open seam down the sideline, and he was able to outrace those Robinson defenders.
They call him the train, and I guess he gets all those hits, and he just keeps on going. But so, guys, my question for you both is that, last week we talked a lot about how Westfield had that really lopsided win over Chantilly, which surprised some people in the region. This week, a much closer game. Any chinks in the Westfield armor that you saw that might suggest whether or not they will be able to beat Oakton and continue on through the Concorde unscathed?
I think one would be their run defense. They do have a very very talented defense, but they had a challenging time stopping Alex Murray and Winton Fox, both who ran over 100 yards. And then another chink in the armor, as you said. Finiak has had a solid season, but this is not the the high flying pass attack that we've seen from previous Westfield teams. They may be moving in that direction. But, they made key passes when they needed to. But, they did not have, the quick strike capability in the air that, that you had last year with Glennon and Johnny Pickett and David Crutchko at wide receiver. But, another, an asset that Westfield had. Now, in the second half, the Robinson defense did a much better job of keying on Jordan Anderson and making those tackles. He did not break as many tackles in the second half. But then Westfield utilized their fullback, Jay Jackson, a little bit more. And he was very effective in getting those quick bursts right up the middle, and then also as a receiver as well. He on the scoring drive, on the winning scoring drive, he kind of slipped past the defenders and caught a key pass there. So good with the short passes, but the downfield bombs that may be a little bit of a chink in the armor.
All right, well, guys, so we've talked about Westfield Robinson. Let's go ahead and take a look at how the rest of the Concorde district shaped up after last Friday. Jim, if you want to take us through the standings.
All right, well, Westfield on top in the Concorde district. They're 2-0 in the district, 5-0 overall, followed by Oakton. I can't wait to see that game, Oakton and Westfield. 1-0 for Oakton, 5-0 for the overall record. They're followed by Herndon, Chantilly, Fairfax, Robinson, and Centerville.
All right, guys, so we talked about how, Westfield Robinson, a very close game. Oakton did not have a close game this week. Were you at all surprised? I think you guys have seen both Oakton and Langley play now. Were you guys surprised that this win was so lopsided?
I can't speak for you, Jim, but I sure was.
Yeah, I was too.
I think the Oakton team is really starting to accelerate, and they're really starting
peaking.
to live up to their potential and expectations. But in looking at the stats here, what I'm most impressed with is not necessarily the 82 points as much, but limiting Langley to 61 rushing yards on 35 attempts, because Langley has that big, strong offensive line, and their running back David Helmer is who's a good running back, but he's really been able to benefit from their blocking. And they just the Oakton linebackers, Jack Tyler and Joey McCallum, they just held them. So that's what I'm really impressed with. They seem to be improving. When they hit a hot streak, they hit a hot streak.
Well, and they've already met the number of wins that they had from last season. They're already at that 5-win mark. But I agree. I was really surprised that Helmer only had about 63 yards. We've talked about him a lot on the show because he's been so impressive this season. So just that must have been an outstanding defensive performance from Oakton. And certainly Chris Coyer.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you were really impressed with his performance this week.
Yeah, when do you see a quarterback run for 132 yards on 5 carries? He had touchdowns in the first half of 33 yards and 72 yards. And this isn't, kind of like a quick little, mobile quarterback. And he's mobile, but he's big and mobile. So that really impressed me. And then his passing efficiency, 7 for 9 for 100 yards. He was just definitely very, very impressive.
And Jim, one of the big stories for Langley has been the injuries. They lost Danny Pritchett at that game that you guys did last week, and his younger brother Austin has also been injured. How much of a factor do you think that played for?
Well, I think it played maybe it gave. I think maybe it gave Kelly a week to think about it when he was just thrown to the wolves right there. He didn't have time to think about it. Now, maybe overthought. Who knows? But I expected Langley. Actually, I picked Langley to upset Oakton because we had seen him. We'd seen Oakton, but then again, we saw Oakton very early in the season, and they've had a chance to improve. Like I said, happened with Robinson. That was a totally different team. But I was expecting more out of Langley last week.
Yeah, I agree with you, dude. From the games that we did, we've seen both teams. Langley, talent notwithstanding, Langley I thought performed better out of the games that we've covered.
And, of course, a little news and notes for people in the region. At that game was Irving Garner, who was an outstanding player for Oakton. He was there for homecoming. Of course, he's playing for Virginia Tech now. He's a little injured, but he was there on the sideline with his former teammates showing support to them. So it's always nice when our former standout players return home. But, all right, guys, so let's keep on moving through the Concorde District. Another big game this week was Chantilly and Herndon. So what were your thoughts on that one? It was a little closer than the score from Oakton and Langley.
Well, just looking at the stats from this game, I thought maybe Herndon would give them a little bit better game. But what really stands out to me is the Chantilly rushing attack, which is their strength. They kind of went back to that, stressed at us. And, when they went to the pass against Langley, things went bad for them. But you look at the stats here: Torian Pace, 184 yards on 26 carries. And then Roger McGrath, 91 yards on 14 carries. So they know what they did. They do well. And then they utilized it to its full effect.
Absolutely. I think the running game is the bread and butter for Chantilly. And against Westfield, they just had no choice. They were behind so far, and they really had to move over to their passing game. And, of course, Roger Strittmatter, another quarterback who's getting used to being the starting quarterback over there at Chantilly, just like you were talking about Danny Finyak earlier. But this looked like just an outstanding win for Chantilly.
Well, after seeing Herndon, I didn't think they were a great team. I thought they were a middle-of-the-pack team. And, if you look at the standings, that's where they are. In the middle of the pack, they'll stay there. Chantilly, I've not seen them play, but from what I've heard, they've got a chance to rise a little bit more. They just got to keep working and stay consistent and keep winning. Herndon, like I said, they've got to get back to work. They've got to, get back to the basics. But I think they have a lot to work with, but I think this year they're going to end up in the middle, just like they are now.
And, guys, the last big story coming out of the Concorde District this week, Fairfax gets their first district win ever. So a huge win for Fairfax over Centerville.
Yeah, it certainly was. The Fairfax program, they appear to be a program on the rise. I remember meeting their coach last season when we did the Woodson game, and he was really enthusiastic about the participation from what they were. From what they were receiving in the program. A lot of players getting into it, and it seems to be gradually paying off for him.
And I don't know how long this is going to happen, but I want to bring it up that Fairfax has a better record in the district right now than Robinson. So, hey, go Fairfax.
Well, and they certainly have a player over there in Chris Regensburg. He's been one of our FSN District Players of the Week already, but having just another outstanding game, the big reason I think that Fairfax was able to defeat Centerville. So great game from him. But speaking of our District Players of the Week, Wynn, if you want to do the honors, I know you were very impressed with our Concorde District Player of the Week.
Well, we had several candidates to choose from, but the decision, Jordan Anderson, he has just been, he's been one of the main stories in the Northern region this season. But there you see it, 192 yards on 28 carries and 3 touchdowns for the season, 700-plus yards rushing already and 13 touchdowns. And, you want to see an example of his ability. You saw it earlier during our clip when he bounced off about 8 tackles, and then he just kept on. The train just kept on moving down the track to the end zone.
Got to tell you a funny story. When we got there, we talking to the PA announcer, very nice guy. I think his name is Lou, and I'm sorry if I can't remember it today, but I'm an older man. But I was, going over the lineups with him and pronunciations, and we got to Anderson. He says, "Yeah, they call him the train." I go, all right. And I was, okay, I wrote it down on the side, but I said, we'll wait to see what he meant. And boy, I tell you, it wasn't long before we knew what the train was all about, was it?
That's right.
All right, guys. Well, I promised our viewers at home special phone-in guests tonight, and one of them is on the line right now, Coach Pete Bendorf from South County High School. Coach, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Well, Coach, first of all, congratulations. What an outstanding game on Friday night. For those in the region who don't know, your team scored 2 touchdowns in 46 seconds to come away with the win. So, Coach, what were you telling your team during that last minute, and what was going through your mind?
Well, it was a little bit crazy. We had not played very well and trailed 23-13 with – actually, we got possession with about 2 minutes to go in the game, and it really had not moved the football at all. We put together a nice little drive. It was just running our 2-minute offense, and we scored with 46 seconds left. And then we onside kicked the ball, and were able to get it. And then we had it on our 37, and we scored on the second play. So on second down, we threw an incomplete on first down, and we just hit a post down the middle that came wide open. We actually scored the 2 touchdowns 19 seconds apart. So it was a great win for our school and our program.
Coach, hello. This is Wynn Ellington. I was back at the Northern Region Championship game when you were at Oakton and y'all were playing Robinson, and I remember the Pat Day scramble run for the touchdown. Obviously, this was not a playoff game, but how does the drama of this compare to what you experienced during that Northern Region Championship game against Robinson?
Well, it's certainly the when you play for a championship, and it was a similar situation in the sense that we were behind and had to score using our 2-minute offense, but the elation of winning a regional championship as opposed to a regular season game obviously doesn't compare. But Friday night. And I say this all the time. I think, some of the best entertainment going for $5 is coming out to a high school football game. It was crazy. I mean,
by far,
our fans came on the field and the whole nine. I mean, it was a great experience. A lot of fun for the kids. We as coaches preach, we're never out of it. Keep playing, play hard to the last whistle. And I can't have a better example than I had Friday night.
Well, Coach, Jim Clark here. Congratulations. I'm a Lake Braddock father, but I know you guys have been suffering since you opened the school there. Good to see the fruits of your labor.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's the ironic part is we've been in a number of these last-minute jobs. In fact, I was talking with Preston Williams from the Washington Post. He called me on Monday, and I didn't even realize it was this many, but we've been in 13 games like this over our 4 years that we've been open. And unfortunately, we've come out on top on the majority of them, but it is crazy down to the end for sure.
Well, and just to put that in perspective, I read that article in the Post, and it's 13 of 32 games, which, talk about drama. I mean, that certainly is worth the price of admission there. But, Coach, I know earlier in the season your quarterback, Aaron Andrews, was injured. And he played in this game on Friday night. What's his status, and, what did you think of his performance on Friday night?
Right. He's good to go now. He had a high ankle sprain that he suffered in the Falls Church game, the second game of the season. And, I had not – I mean, he was available, obviously, for the league game this past Friday, but I had originally not planned to use him. We were, as I told you, we struggled offensively early in the game, and, he provided a spark for us. He, not only is he able to throw the ball a little bit, but he gives us – he's one of those dual-threat quarterbacks. He can run as well as throw, and what we're trying to do offensively, he gives us that. Our other quarterbacks are – they're either decent runners or decent throwers, and he can do both. So we're really happy to have him back.
Well, this Saturday you're going up against T.C. Williams, who is also coming off a big win with a 20-3 victory over Lake Braddock, which was played on Saturday. Were you able to catch that game, and what challenges do you think TC Williams poses to your team?
Well, yeah, I did have the opportunity to stand in the rain a second night after standing in the rain Friday night to take that game in. You know, it's ironic. We played Lee this past Friday, and we're playing TC Williams this Saturday, and both teams, although sporting a not very good record, both of them are 1-4. They're good football teams. You know, anybody who saw the Braddock TC game would realize that. And Joe Thompson, who's the head coach at Oakton, had told me all along, and they had played TC early in the year. He goes, "Nobody will listen to me, but they're real good." They're a very athletic group. You know, they have some real threats at the skill positions. You know, they've had some bad luck and some things that just haven't gone their way. I think also they've played some pretty good people. So we got a big challenge on our hand. You know, I think we're preparing well, and you know, hopefully we don't get another nail biter. Hopefully we can try to put this one away a little bit earlier. But it's going to be a steep challenge for us.
Coach, were you surprised by the score Saturday between Lake Braddock and TC Williams?
Yes, on one hand, I mean, you know, we had just played Braddock, and Lake Braddock had played pretty well, really even in our game as well. And sometimes, you know, they have a young team like Braddock does, and I think, you know, losing a close game like they did to us, it seemed like they had a bit of a hangover from that. That seemed to hang with them, I think, a little bit. The other thing about TC Williams, which is pretty consistent with their history, they're very good if they get out in front, and that's what they did. They were able to, you know, score early on Lake Braddock, and you know, from that point they were able to kind of control the game. The key with TC Williams is, you know, not let them get started. Annandale 2 weeks ago was able to jump on them early and shut them out 27-0. So that's obviously something that we're focusing on as well.
Well, Coach, thank you so much for joining us. You've been such a great friend to our show. We really appreciate your time.
Anytime. You guys do a great job.
Thank you.
All righty.
All right, guys. Well, so that is one of the Patriot District games this week. Let's take a look at how the district broke down after Friday night. Of course, West Springfield and West Potomac, two of the big teams. But if you want to take us through the standings here.
All right, here we go. Up at the top, West Potomac, 2-0 in the district, 5-0 overall. West Springfield also at 2-0 in the district, 3-2 overall. South County, 2-0 in the district, 3-2 overall. Annandale at 1-1, 2-3 overall. TC Williams also at 1-1, 1-4 overall. Lake Braddock 0-2 in the district, 2-3 overall. Hayfield 0-2 in the district, 1-4 overall, and then followed by Lee with an identical record.
All right, guys. So one of the big games this week, of course, West Potomac. You know, we've talked a lot about their offense all year. They've got this great quarterback, Cole Walter, Christian Rodriguez, he's a big threat at the wide receiver position. But were you guys a little surprised when you saw the score and that West Potomac seemed to struggle a little bit this week?
I was. Yes, I was. That was. I don't know what happened. You know, I've seen several West Potomac and Hayfield games since I've been over the last 6 years since I've been doing this. And it is, you know, a pretty big rivalry, and it's one of those where you never can. It's one of those where you can kind of throw the records out the window. So in that sense, you know, I wasn't, but you know, I did not think it would be a defensive struggle like this.
Well, and you know, when you look at the numbers too, I mean, Cole Walter, he had around something like 134 passing yards, and so it looked like their passing game, you know, wasn't what it had been, and certainly the weather was really bad on Friday night. But we've had that bad weather for several weeks, you know, so they're getting used to playing in the rain by now. But putting up those type of offensive numbers will not do it against a West Springfield club who they're facing very soon. And speaking of West Springfield, Jim.
Well, I was just going to add, I think West Potomac is a lot better than that score shows.
Absolutely.
If you look at, you know, West Potomac scored 17 unanswered points. Okay, you know, maybe somebody was showing some good sportsmanship. I don't know. You know, I'm hopefully, you know, I'd love to see Hayfield be doing that well. Mm-hmm. I don't think they are. I'd love for them to do that well, but I think, you know, once you score 17 points on somebody and, you know, you can hold somebody at bay, why rub it in, you know?
All right, well, this is a pet issue of Jim, so, but I agreed, completely agreed. But so now on the flip side of the coin, West Springfield putting up the offensive numbers that we are used to seeing every single week. And Bren Renner, I mean, guys, he has been sensational, but I think this past week against Annandale, he was amazing.
Well, yeah, he certainly was. 20 of 24 for 322 yards and 4 touchdowns. He also does it on the ground, 47 rushing yards and a touchdown. But, it's not just Bryn Renner who's doing this. He has got a stable of weapons at his disposal. Wide receiver Andy Stallings, who caught 9 passes and 2 touchdowns. And then, Brandon Bailey, since he's been back, I believe this is the second game back, he's just been, tearing up the turf, 155 yards on 24 carries. And, this is kind of, we've seen a lot of West Springfield scores that are similar to this. They beat Robinson 50-27. This 48-27. I mean, they are an offensive machine. They just gotta just outscore their opponents. It's a shootout when the Spartans take the field.
I think the Spartans, like we were talking earlier, Spartans had a real rough beginning to this season, and I think they're out to prove something not only to themselves but to the critics that hey, these guys are for real, and putting up 48 points? Yeah, 48 points. That's that's not bad. But hey, and then again, Annandale. They didn't get creamed either. I mean, there was 27, so they put some points up on the board. Probably was a good football game, but I think that West Springfield is a lot better than their record shows right now. And I think they're just going to get stronger and stronger and stronger as they go on.
One win, I think you hit the nail on the head because they do have this stable of weapons that you were talking about. We mentioned Bailey, we mentioned Stallings, also TJ O'Connell this week, another one just stepping right in. 2 touchdowns for O'Connell. They have Fabrice Cambinga. You don't know who it's going to be each week. Stallings and Bailey, of course, always have the big numbers, but just so many different options for Renner.
See, I know what he's laughing at because I was down at West Springfield at the beginning of the season, and because all I heard was West Springfield. And I didn't see anything out of them. But, they're making a liar out of me, which has been done many a time. So, hey, I'm glad for them. They're neighbors of mine. I shop in the same places where they shop. So, hey, go West Springfield. I hope they had a great season.
Are they throwing the cabbage in the store?
No.
Okay.
All right. Well, guys, so we've seen some of our highlights for this week, but we also have highlights for you from the T.C. Williams Lake Braddock game that Coach Bendorf talked a little bit about. So we were there. But first of all, let's talk about our Patriot District Player of the Week. And Andy Stallings, no surprise there. He's had a couple of really good games so far this season, but completely outstanding this past Friday. 170 receiving yards on 9 passes for 2 touchdowns. And you also see his numbers from last week, 92 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns. So great performance by Andy Stallings. All right, but now hopefully we can go into some of those highlights for you guys from the Lake Braddock TC game, Jim.
All right, here we start out. There's a keeper by Michael Niebrick. And he was kind of the workhorse all day, but Lake Braddock had a real hard time getting things going. They just couldn't threaten at all. And T.C. Williams took advantage of it. They had some great plays, great play by all day long by Zach Goller, the quarterback. They just kept punching it right up the middle at Lake Braddock. And Lake Braddock, the passes, there were a lot of overthrown passes. I was just really surprised that it went the way it did. There you go, another great pass, Cortez Taylor and Abu Kamara, I'm not sure of his name, but he was another great. Those guys are the people that got up and won the game for the T.C. Williams Titans. I was real happy for them because they hadn't won all year.
Yeah, tremendous win for T.C. Williams. I was surprised about this score.
There's Mansoray. They called on him a lot, and the other thing that was killing Lake Braddock were penalties.
Well,
That'll do it.
Guys, we've talked a little bit about T.C. Williams on this program because their record really does not reflect how good they are. I mean, I think Coach Bendorf is right, and he certainly knows a lot more about this than I do. But, they've played some tough games. Oakton, a tough team for them to play. They played Mount Vernon and just struggled. And as I said earlier in the season, they just had trouble putting together 2 good halves of football. And when they can finally get it together, they could really be an impressive team.
Yeah, they certainly can. And it'll be interesting to see what kind of momentum they have coming after this win and whether, how they will compete against the rest of the
Look at this play. Look at this play right here from goal. Isn't that great?
It's like Elway in the Super Bowl when he did the helicopter.
I know, and they were doing this kind of stuff. They wanted the game more than Lake Braddock did. You could see when they came out to start the game, they were more pumped up than Lake Braddock. When they came back for halftime, they were more pumped up. And the kicker, this Brian Frank, I got to give it to him. Next guy. If you haven't seen a straight-on kicker before, you got to watch replays of this because you won't see him very often. But, you know, he tried some long field goals and got pretty close. But I was just enjoying the old-school straight-on kicking. But they did a wonderful game. Again, there's Kamara. Lake Braddock just couldn't get anything going. They'd get something going. There, nice penalty, a little face mask there.
Well, and Lake Braddock certainly probably a little frustrated. I mean, they have this game against TC Williams, their game against South County, a very close one. They lose there, and so they're definitely going to have to try to right that ship and get back together for the rest of the.
Jim Poitras at Lake Braddock is fine. He has a young team. I mean, his quarterback's a sophomore. He was the 9th grade quarterback last year with my kid, and. And he works very hard, and to put a kid into that position, fine. But, Poitras is looking ahead. Sometimes you got to do that.
Right.
And I think next year, especially when he's a senior, Niebrick is going to be probably one of the best quarterbacks in the state.
Well, when we see some of these plays, he has an incredible arm, it looks like. But look at that run by TC. Was that
Kamara again.
Looked kind of like Jordan Anderson right there, just breaking tackles down the sideline.
No, I have to hand it to TC Williams. They just they beat Lake Braddock every way possible.
Well, and I think Kamara's been out with an injury too, which is one reason that may have been why they were getting off to a bit of a slower start. But he looked very healthy in all those highlights, so hopefully they'll be able to get their season together. But a tough Patriot district for them to go through when you have to face the likes of West Springfield, West Potomac, and South County has just been sensational.
The only thing makes me think that why Lake Braddock was so flat is because the game was scheduled for Friday. You get mentally ready for Friday, then you got to wait. And then, it's just Saturday, the band's not there, the band is in a competition. It's just not the same. So
and TC Williams is used to playing on Saturday.
That's right. So that's an advantage. So.
All right. Well, you heard it here first. All right. Well, we are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we are going to jump into the cross-country report. So come right back. All right, welcome back to the Fairfax Sports Report. We've been talking a lot about football, but we are going to shift gears right now and talk about one of our other favorite sports in the fall, cross country. And on the phone, we have Coach Phil Tiller from Oakton High School. Coach, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Well, welcome, Coach. Your team off to a great start so far this season, and I want to talk with you a little bit about this Oatlands Invitational because it sounds like it was an amazing event. 101 teams, I read, 4,400 runners, and your team had a pretty sensational day on both the boys and girls side. Tell us a little bit about the event and some standouts from your team.
Sure. Well, thanks, first of all, for having me on the show. And the Oatlands Invitational was a fantastic event. It's the first year that we had been there, but it's been going on for several years now. And, I think our boys and girls did very, very well at all the different levels. Our sort of standout two races were the two invitational races where our boys finished first place and our girls were third. Our boys were led by junior Andrew McCullen, one of our upcoming stars, and our girls were led by Becca Kasabian, who's one of our senior captains.
Coach, hello, this is Wynn Ellington. I understand that you have a very talented transfer from Fairfax named Dante Morales. What has his addition meant to your team?
It's been really good having Dante. He transferred over from Fairfax, as you said, and he got some good experience and a great heart and knowledge of the sport, very dedicated, and he's fit right in with our group of boys. And been a very capable leader with good experience. So it's been good to have him. And he's definitely somebody that we'll rely on as the season goes on to be somebody that's a threat for big points at the district, regional, and state level.
Now, Coach, your team was, the boys at least, were the preseason #1 team, and I know the girls were outstanding at states last year. I think they were the runner-up. Did your team feel a lot of pressure coming into this season? Because I think there are some very high expectations for your team.
Yeah, it's a good question, and it is tough to the way that the internet and rankings and things have gone over the last few years, it's really surged into something that's become very big and popular. And as you said, going into the season as a preseason number one, and then carrying that through into the season as the first couple of weeks being the number one team, it does put pressure on the team, but we really try to look beyond it. We try to acknowledge that it's a great compliment to be recognized by coaches and newspapers and other schools and districts as being the top program or one of the top programs. But a lesson we learned last year when we had an outstanding boys team was that we just kind of ran out of gas at the end of the season. And even though I think it was really probably one of the best teams, if not the best team we've had in the history of Oakton cross country, at the end of the season we racked up some injuries and some unfortunate sicknesses, and it caused us to kind of plummet down. So we've sort of taken a leave of that this year and said, we're going to take it week by week and do everything we can to be a successful team. And if the cards fall right and you do everything right as a coach and the kids do everything right as athletes, then hopefully by the end we'll be up there on the podium.
Now, Coach, is Brian Hendricks, is he out for the season or will he be returning?
He is hopeful to return. He suffered a knee injury this summer, right at the very end of July, and actually broke his kneecap. And so he had to have a pretty extensive surgery on it, and it really that was tough. It was tough for us to deal with, but we knew that Brian would be working. He's already completed his rehabilitation with the physical therapist, and he's been permitted to begin, some pretty rigorous exercises to get him back. So we're not counting on his return, but we're optimistic for it.
And Coach, last question. I know you've got some meets coming up out of state. You've got the Wendy's Invitational in my home state of North Carolina, and then the Manhattan Invitational. Are there particular things you're stressing going into these meets, which will then take you into more of the district meets and then the region?
Yeah. Well, the Wendy's meet is an interesting one because it's a very, very fast course, and it's a very famous course in McAlpine Park in Charlotte, North Carolina, and it's also the location of the Foot Locker Southern Region Championships. So it's sort of a way for us to take our up and coming younger kids there and give them a feel for that type of event, and also for our older kids, if that ends up being a route we choose to go after the state meet, for them to try to compete for individual spots in the Foot Locker Championship, that they'll have had some experience on the course. But with the North Carolina meet, we're definitely expecting it to be very, very competitive. Some great teams from North Carolina, I believe one from Georgia, and some other teams from the southern area there that will be formidable opponents. And we're hoping to have a real good season or a real good meet there. We're going to be without one or two of our kids who are taking SATs that weekend, so we'll be a little bit down in our numbers, but we're pretty optimistic that we'll be able to do well anyway.
Oh, excellent. Coach, thank you so much for joining us. We one more question, I think, from Jim Clark, and we will let you go.
Hey, Coach, Jim Clark. I don't know anything about cross country. Tell me about it. I mean, how far do these kids run? What, how often do they have meets? For someone out there that doesn't know about cross country, give us a little information.
That's a good question. Well, cross country is pretty interesting. It's in the high school level, it's 5,000 meters for girls and boys, which equates to 3.1 miles. So it's roughly 12 and a half laps of a high school track, or of any track, really. And the kids compete numerous times in the season. For instance, each high school is part of a district, much like football, where you have meets or races just within your own district, and we'll race against Centerville and Chantilly and Westfield and Robinson and Herndon and Fairfax. And we all have little sort of what we sort of view as junior varsity races, more of races of experience for the younger kids who are just coming to the sport, very new to it. And then on Saturdays, you're able to go to invitational races, which we've done twice so far this season, and we'll do this Saturday. and then again up in Manhattan for the New York Invitational. And those are more where you're going to take your upper kids, your more experienced kids. You sort of view them as a more varsity caliber invitational race.
What's a fast time? What's the fastest time ever in cross country? Do you know?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, depending on where you are in the world and the course, it's always very difficult to look at the times in cross country because, for instance, the race that we're going to this Saturday in North Carolina, there's almost no hills at all to the course. So with that in mind, you'll assume that the kids will run probably faster there than they ever have before.
Okay.
Whereas at the Oatlands Invitational, which we went to just 2 weeks ago, is a very hilly and pretty challenging course with a couple of crossings of a stream, some pretty severe up and down hills, sharp turns, which make the race very exciting, and it makes it not so much a race that goes to the fastest person, but maybe the strongest person who's able to withstand the change of pace and ups and downs of hills and still complete the course in the.
Now is it scored individually or is it just scored as a team?
It's scored. That's the beauty of cross country. It's not necessarily having somebody that's outstanding helps your team. It really is a team effort. So you run with 7 boys or 7 girls in the team, and much like in golf where the lowest score wins, cross country is the same.
All right,
so
Coach. Listen.
Basically, your first person. If you win the race, you score 1 point. If you're second, you score 2, third, 3, etc. So
right.
the best you could possibly do is about 15 points, which would be 1, 2, 3.
Hey, now I know everything I need to know about cross country. Thank you so much, Coach. I appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on the show.
All right.
All right, guys. So we're going to take another quick break, and when we come back, we'll jump right back into football with the Liberty District. All right, welcome back to the Fairfax Sports Report. So we've talked to you about the Concorde District. We've talked to you about the Patriot District. Now let's talk a little bit about the Liberty District, guys. So we'll take a look at what the standings stood at the end of this weekend's games. And at the top of the list, you see Stonebridge. They're still perfect, 5-0, followed by Woodson, Langley, and Madison. You see Langley and Madison there with the same records. They play each other this week. Marshall, South Lakes, Thomas Jefferson, and McLean rounding out the bunch. And guys, we've talked so much about the Stonebridge Club this season, once again putting in a stellar offensive effort from the Bulldogs against McLean.
Oh yeah, Stonebridge dominating once again. They beat McLean 51-13. Daniel Allen, he continues to just, the end zone is his second home. 167 yards rushing with 4 touchdowns. At halftime the score was 51-0. Coach Thompson put in the reserves for the second half. And McLean, they fought hard in the second half. They got a talented player here. Was it Riley Byro, who had 2 touchdowns as well? Who had 2 touchdowns?
Yeah, he's been outstanding. Had a great game in the preceding week against Washington and Lee. He just does everything for his team, plays offense, plays defense. We've seen so many of those players this year, and against Washington and Lee got so dehydrated his coach had to take him out of the game for a little bit. But all these workhorse players that just do everything for their team have been outstanding. But guys, you just can't say enough about Stonebridge. They've really looked impressive and just continue on putting up the big offensive numbers, and that's just the first half.
Yeah, just a complete team. 7 yards total they allowed in the first half.
And that's one thing about Stonebridge. Their defense has just been so outstanding. So very impressive effort from them. And guys, Woodson also having a very good game. South Lakes, they get the shutout.
Well, one thing I can't remember, have Woodson and Stonebridge played yet?
No, they have not.
They have not. Okay. All right, that'll be an interesting game. I'd like to see that. Stonebridge, they are very good. And I that takes nothing away from them. And, my feeling about them running up the score that one time, that's to heck with it. They're a great team. It's going to be interesting to see what happens when they start playing people their own caliber.
All right, and so let's take a look at our Liberty District Player of the Week. We just talked about him, but it is Riley Byro from McLean. Had an outstanding game against Stonebridge. The Bulldogs just a little bit too much to handle with his 2 touchdowns. Last week, he had an 85-yard punt return for a touchdown, so a very strong player over there at McLean. McLean's had some tough times so far this season. We'll see if they're able to get some wins before the season's over. But now let's switch out of the Liberty District and move on to our last district. You guys know it. It is the National National District. And when, if you want to tell the viewers at home, we're going to show them on the screen where we are in the National District.
All right, a familiar team sitting at the with the top seed in the National District. The Edison Eagles, 2-0 in the district, 5-0 overall, followed by Yorktown, 2-0 and 4-1. Then Mount Vernon, 1-1 and 3-2. Wakefield, 1-1, 1-4 overall. Jeb Stewart, 0-1 in the district, 1-4 overall. Stewart lost to Marshall, by the way, 28-0. Good, Marshall from the Liberty District. Good defensive performance from Marshall, only allowing Stewart 64 yards total offense. Washington and Lee, 0-1 in the district, 2-3 overall. Then down at the bottom, the Falls Church Jaguars, 0-2 in the district, 0-5 overall.
And guys, we've seen this Edison team play, and they just continue to be unbelievable. They played Wakefield on Friday night, and they've looked really impressive.
They certainly have. You know, funny, we just had the cross country from Coach Moakton on. Edison turns each game into a track meet. That's the way they like to do it.
I like it.
And,
bringing in the cross country here.
Yeah,
I love it,
and
Win.
then, you know, 36-6 over Wakefield. Big favorites in that game. And look at the story from that game. Angus Harper. We're continuing to have some impressive stats throughout from the past week. But look at this. He's just a junior. He's back from injury. Welcome back, Angus. 256 yards rushing on 16 carries. How about that kind of average?
Well, welcome back. Angus Harper is right. He is our National District Player of the Week. Wynn just read his stats out to you, but you see he's back from injury. He was injured last season as well, but that was a season-ending injury. He's back now with his Edison Eagles team and has been impressive. All right, guys. Well, that was our quick mad dash to continue Wynn's kind of track and field cross country here through the football in the region. But before we go, let's bring up our top 10 of the week, how our rankings stood. We vote on these. And Jim, if you want to
let's do this fast because Monica doesn't have much time for volleyball, all right? We don't want to make her mad. Go ahead.
No, we don't.
Go ahead.
All right. Number 1, Stonebridge, no surprise. Followed by the Rising Oakton Cougars at number 2. 3, Edison. 4, Westfield. 5, West Springfield. We're sticking in. We're out west now. 6, West Potomac. 7, Chantilly. 8, Robinson. 9, Woodson. Welcome to the top 10. South County, welcome to.
All right, yeah, a couple new additions to our rankings this week. So, and guys, there are going to be some great games in the region this coming Friday night. And the one that we're doing, of course, is Centerville-Robinson. So I want to know, Jim, we just saw Robinson play. Who do you think's got the edge on that game?
Robinson, no discussion.
When do you think they're going to be looking to come back after that loss this past weekend to Fairfax?
Yeah, both teams are going to be looking to come back after the loss. Now, these teams have a history with each other. Before Robinson was in the Concorde District, they met a lot in the playoffs. Robinson has the historical advantage over Centerville, but these teams traditionally play some tough, hard-fought games. Expect another one Friday night.
Well, after we saw Beddendorf before he got on the bus after last week's game, we figured they had a real rough week. So I'm going with Robinson all the way.
Now, guys, now we're to the game that I think a lot of people in the region have been waiting for. I know you guys are very excited about it. West Potomac, West Springfield. Win, who you got?
I'm going to go with West Springfield. The Water Boys better get the bottles filled up because this is really going to be a track meet, and there's going to be some huffing and puffing in this game.
It's going to be close. I go with West Potomac for 2 reasons. Number 1, they're the Wolverines, and number 2, their fight song is Hail to the Victors. That's what I'm going with.
It's Wolverines versus Spartan.
All right, let's not start. Wolverines always.
All right. Well, Jim, I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to pick West Potomac. Every time I go against Win, I lose this battle. So we'll see if this week finally I can beat Win on one of these.
We need to start putting money on this.
I'm picking West Potomac this week. I'm very impressed with their quarterback, very impressed with their wide receiver, Christian Rodriguez. So looking for a big game from the Wolverines. And guys, another one. I mean, there's so many big games this week, but Chantilly-Oakton, Jim.
I'll go with Oakton. How about you, Win?
Hey, Jim, I'm gonna agree with you. Oakton Cougars they're hitting their stride here, but it'll be a good game. I'm interested to see what Torian Pace is gonna do against this Oakton defense. The way Oakton stuffed David Helmer last week, so that's gonna be an interesting factor of this game.
That's a great point. Yeah, I've got Oakton as well in this game, but I think it is going to be a good game. Chantilly, of course, does not want to have 2 losses in the Concorde District at this juncture, so I think that's going to be a good one. And then Woodson at Westfield for homecoming. Jim, who you got?
Well, that'll be an interesting one. I tell you what, we'll find out what Woodson's made of this week, okay? And if they'll be able to do
anything with Stonebridge after this week. I'm going to go with Westfield.
All right, Len.
I'd love to pick an upset, but no, I'm going to say, well, I'm going to stick with Westfield at home.
All right, and I got to agree with you guys. I think Westfield is going to be 6-0 come Friday, and our last game of the week is Madison-Langley. Now, guys, these teams have identical records. Langley, of course, had the huge loss last week against Oakton. Jim, who do you think is going to come out on
I'm
top?
going with Madison, and the only reason I'm going with Madison is because their quarterback situation. Langley, I think, Kelly over at Langley, I think, like I said, the longer he thinks about it, the longer it's hurting him, and so I just think I think Madison's going to pull it off.
Kelly's going to have a rebound week. Langley will have a rebound week. It'll be a tough game, probably about a 3-point difference. I'm going to roll with the Saxons.
Gosh, Len, I'm going to go against you again. I'm going to pick Madison. So Jim and I will see how our picks pan out against yours next week. But so you heard it here first. Those are our picks for the big games this Friday night. But before we go, Wynn has one more comment.
I got one more big game that's not on here. Edison versus Yorktown.
Oh, that is a big game.
Number 1 and number 2 in the National District. It's going to be, I believe it's going to be at Yorktown. I'm going to Edison Eagles. But it's going to be a high-scoring game, I believe. So this will be another. It'll be like West Potomac versus West Springfield Junior, I believe.
I'm not picking on that because I want her to get the volleyball.
All right. Well, thank you.
Go Edison. That's
all right. So before we go, let's take a look at the volleyball standings, my volleyball standings, and not a lot of movement this week. You see Chantilly still perfect. They squared off against Herndon. It's a very good Herndon team, but defeated them 3-0. Westfield at 8-2, Herndon 11-1. Their only loss, that loss to Chantilly. Then Centerville at 5-2, and Robinson at 5-4. They've struggled a little bit, but I stand by this very good Robinson team. Just got a tough Concorde district to go through now. But again, Herndon having that loss, but they are just such an exceptional team. And I saw they've moved into the Washington Post rankings for the whole metro area. They're number 10 on that list. Chantilly is number 7. So that is huge for Herndon. They've got 3 girls on that team that are over 5'10". And Steph Drahosel is having a standout season. I think before the season started, a lot of people did not know who this young lady was, but everyone knows who she is now because she is really stepping up big for Pat Smith. And Pat Smith has changed a little bit in her coaching philosophy because in the past she's always stressed defense, but she said that she's learned from some of her close games experiences that she feels like sometimes her teams become less aggressive on offense because of that focus on defense. So she's changed up a little bit of her coaching strategy, and Herndon off to their best start and certainly looking like they're going to be a contender in both the Concorde District and the Northern Region. Now, I want to talk about a couple of teams now that I do not normally get to talk about in my rankings, but that I've been really impressed with so far, and one of them is West Springfield. They are standing at 7-3 so far, and those 3 losses to pretty good teams. They've lost to Herndon, Langley, Stonebridge, but have been outstanding, and 2 of their players, Lawrence Sipple and Amanda Miller, their 2 captains, have really stepped up big for them. And first-year head coach Stephanie Noriega, very happy with how well her team's playing. She's got 12 girls on that team, and she says all of them could be starters. She thinks there's a lot of parity amongst the talent. They're all very talented young ladies, and she's looking for very, very big things from them as they go into the Patriot District. Of course, they are the Patriot District defending champions. And then another team that I really want to talk about is Yorktown. And I think when a lot of people look at their record so far, they see that they're 3-7, so they think that maybe this Yorktown club not as good as a lot of people thought they were going to be. But you have to look at the level of talent that they've been playing. I mean, they've played Westfield, they've played Chantilly, they defeated Stonebridge, and another big win for them is a big win over Stewart. They've already played Stewart, who, if you remember back to in the beginning when we did our fall preview, I told you that I thought Stewart was going to be the big contender along with Yorktown in the National District. They defeated Stewart 3-0. The scores in that match were 25-18, 25-18, and 25-15. And so it's really looking like Yorktown is going to tear through the National District and win the title there. All right, and then lastly, I just want to say congratulations to Teresa Harvey over at Fairfax, who is committed to go to Iona next year. She's going to play volleyball and swim for them. As I told you, she got the state relay record last year in swimming with her teammates over at Fairfax, and she has been absolutely sensational for them on both the volleyball court and in the pool. All right, so that's the volleyball report, guys. We are almost out of time, but we got through volleyball,
All right.
got through everything we needed to get through today. So please join us back next week when we go through and see how our picks for this week panned out. So Win can either gloat or not. But again, special thanks to our teammates at CCI Screen Printing, 703-978-0257. And again, please do not forget that we are on the web. Check out our website, and we will see you back here same time next week. Thanks for joining us.